Mahabharata is an earlier Indonesian book. Section 7. Santo Saba Works. Created as a discourse to scientists based on academic studies and studies, in an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. Indonesia Arya. By Santo Saba. Exploration and Research. Complete info. WhatsApp to +62 813 2132 9787. Indian version of the Vasudeva. Vasudeva has two younger siblings. The women were Kunti Pandawa's mother, and the men were Srutadewa or Srutasrawa's father of Sisupala, who later became Kresna's mortal enemy and was killed by Krishna during the Rajasriya ceremony at the Indraprastha palace held by Yudhishthira. They belong to the Yadava dynasty. Their ancestor was Yadu, or sometimes also called Surasena, because their ancestors were also prominent names. Including the Javanese people are the Resni, Andaka, and Boja dynasty. Resni was a descendant of Yadu in the Yadava nation. Resni was born as the eldest son of Maharaja Madhu from the 19th generation of Yadu's son, the son of Yayati. Wangsa Resni is descendant of Resni. Krishna entered into the Chandrawangsa branch of Resni descent, and from there he got the name Warshniya. The people of Dwaraka are known as Wangsa Resni. The capital of these dynasty was Mathura, which was led by Ugrasena. In the Bhagavata Purana it is said that there was a giant who flew over the city of Mathura and was interested in seeing Padmawati, the incredibly beautiful wife of Ugrasena. The giant then transformed into Ugrasena and had intercourse with Padmawati. From this relationship was born Kamsa. No one knew this fact, including Kamsa himself. Kamsa had two confidants, namely Banasura, who often advocated taking the throne. Kannar, who suggested that Kamsa should marry the two daughters of Jarasandha, the king of the Magadha kingdom, who were also friends of Banasura. The names of the two daughters were Asti and Prapti. Kamsa was finally Jarasandha's son-in-law and ally. The Magadha troops sent by Jarasandha to escort the two daughters were used by Kamsa to force Ugrasena to step down from Mathura's throne. Ugrasena was then thrown into the palace prison. Kamsa inherited Mathura's throne after throwing his father, King Ugrasena, into prison. Kamsa had a cousin named Dewaki who he considered his own younger brother. Dewaki married Vasudeva and their marriage was celebrated with great fanfare by Kamsa. Suddenly there was a voice from the sky that someday Kamsa would die at the hands of God's son. Previously Vasudeva already had a wife named Rahini. For fear that the prediction would come true, he threw the couple into prison. After that, every time Devaki gave birth to a child he took and killed the baby. Already 6 Dewaki's children were killed by their siblings. During Dewaki's 7th pregnancy, the fetus she was carrying miraculously moved to Rahini, Vasudeva's first wife, who wanted a son. Therefore, Balada is also called Sangkarsana, which means transfer of the fetus. Balarama was white at the time of Devaki's 8th pregnancy. The gods put all the prison guards to sleep. The prison doors opened and Vasudeva was easily smuggled out and entrusted to Yasoda and Nanda or Nadagopa in Gokula, Mahavana. After that, Vasudeva took Nandagopa's daughter back to the prison. The next morning, Kamsa came to the prison to kill Dewaki's newborn baby. When he saw that the baby was a girl, he felt victorious over the divination of the gods. Sri Krishna was born on July 19, 3228 BC. This date is the Indian version of the claim date regarding the truth when it happened, of course, must go through research. Apart from this claim states that the Mahabharata incident actually happened. And about the location and the incident, here the author is in the counter-discourse, namely the discourse that has been circulating by the Mahabharata and all kingdoms in India. While the author's claim here states that Mahabharata really happened with a war called Bharatayuddha and the center of the kingdom in the Mahabharata news is in the archipelago. After Balarama and Krishna were born, finally Rahini had her own child, a woman named Subhadra, who was white. Babies born by Rahini and Dewaki each grew up to become young men named Balarama and Krishna. Both were raised by the couple Nandagopa and Yasoda in a rural environment. Kamsa finally learned of the two of them. They were also invited to Mathura to attend a celebratory party. When the two of them arrived at Mathura, Kamsa tried to kill them. But the divine prophecy did come true. In a fight, Krishna was the one who managed to kill Kamsa. Kamsa, Javanese version. In Javanese puppetry, Kamsa is spelled as Kangsa, and is the son of Vasudeva, the king of the Mandura kingdom. The Javanese version of Ugrasena is not Vasudeva's father-in-law, but his youngest sister. It is said that Vasudeva had 4 wives, namely Mahira, Rahini, Dawaki, and Badraini. One day when Vasudeva was hunting in the forest, a giant king from the Gargra kingdom appeared, named Gauravamsa, who disguised himself and had sex with Mahira. This was discovered by Rukma, Vasudeva's sister. He killed Gauravamsa. Vasudeva, who heard Rukma's report, immediately threw Mahira into the forest. There she gave birth to the Kangsa with the help of a giant priest named Angawamsa. Mahira himself later died. Kangsa babies were turned into adults in an instant by Angawamsa. Kangsa then visited Vasudeva in Mandura to ask to be recognized as a child. It so happened that at that time Mandura was attacked by Suratrimantra, Gauravamsa's sister, who wanted to take revenge. Kangsa defeated Suratrimantra and received recognition from Vasudeva. Vasudeva, who was worried about Kangsa's ambition and supernatural powers, decided to entrust his children, namely Balarama, Kresna, and Subhadra, to his assistants who lived in Widarakandang village, named Antigopa and Sagopi. Meanwhile, Kangsa had been given the position of Duke in S. Completora by Vasudeva. Suratrimantrayang, now serving as governor, tells Kangsa that he is actually Gauravamsa's real son. Kangsa also decided to seize the throne from Vasudeva's hands. Kangsa also found out that the Vasudeva children were hidden in Widarakandang. He sent soldiers to kill them. However, because he was not there, the target was Antigopa, who was arrested and brought to Kangsa's place. Meanwhile, Sagopi and Subhadra managed to escape. Sagopidan Subhadra, who was chased by the Kangsa warriors, was rescued by Arjuna, Vasudeva's nephew. They also met Balarama and Kresna, each of whom had just studied supernatural powers. Together they headed to Kangsa's place to free Antigopa. Kangsa himself challenged Vasudeva to compete. If the master Vasudeva lost, he had to hand over the throne of Mandura to Kangsa. The Kangsa champion was none other than Suratrimantra, while the champion of Vasudeva was Bhimasena, Arjuna's older brother. In a match on the stage, Bhima defeated Suratrimantra. But as soon as he saw Baladeva coming, Suratrimantra immediately descended on him to kill him. Balarama quickly killed the giant first. Seeing the death of his uncle, Kangsa immediately caught Balarama. Kresna tried to help but was caught too. Both of them were suffocated. To help his 2 brothers, Subhadra stood before Kangsa. Kangsa was fascinated, so he let his guard down. Arjuna shot him in the chest, so that Bali and Krishna were released. At that time Balarama and Kresna rose to attack Kangsa with their respective weapons. Kangsa was killed. This event in the puppet is known as the story of Kangsa Adu Jago. Kangsa left a very heavy club named Ruyakpolo and no one could move him, except Bhimasena. Therefore, the heirloom club later became Bhima's. Balarama, or Indian version of Balarama. Balarama or Balarama, also called Balabhadra and Halayuda, is Krishna's older brother. In Vaishnava philosophy and several cult traditions in southern India, he is worshipped as the 6th avatar of Maha Avatara and is one of the 25 avatara in the Puranas. According to Vaishnava philosophy and some Hindu views, he is a manifestation of the Sesa, the holy snake who became the throne of Lord Vishnu. Balarama is worshipped with Lord Krishna as the personality of the Supreme Lord and in their worship is often called Krishna Balarama. In the previous incarnation of Vishnu, namely Rama, then Balarama was Laxmana. In the age of Kali, he was incarnated as Nityananda, a friend of Sri Caitanya. Nanda, Krishna's stepfather, invited Rezi, Muni Garga, to name Kresna and Balarama. The ceremony was carried out in secret so that Kamsa would not know and suspect him. Because Balarama, Rohini's son, was able to add various blessings, his name was Rama, and because of his extraordinary strength, he was called Balarama. He was able to attract the Yadu house to follow his orders, hence his name Sankarshana, Bhagavadapurana, 10.8.12. In his childhood, he was named Rama. But because of his amazing strength, he is called Balarama, strong Rama, or Balarama. Balarama spent his childhood as a cowherder with Kresna and his friends. He is married to Skip, the daughter of Raiwata from Anarta. Balarama armed with a plow and club. He taught Bhima and Duryodhana to use the Gada weapon. In the war in Kurukshetra, Balarama was neutral. However, when Bhima was about to kill Duryodhana, he threatened to kill Bhima. Krishna then made Balarama aware that Bhima killing Duryodhana was an obligation to fulfill his oath. In addition, Krishna reminded Balarama of all the bad behavior of Duryodhana. King Baladeva Javanese version. Prabhu Baladeva, who was named Kakrasana when he was young, was the son of Prabhu Vasudeva, the king of Madura state, and his consort, Dui Mahendra or Mika. He was born twins with his younger brother, and has another sister named Dui Subhadra or Dui Lara Orang, the daughter of Prabhu Vasudeva and the consort Dui Badrahini. Balarama also has another brother named Arya Udawa, the son of Prabhu Vasudeva and Ken Sagupi, a Swarawati from the Mandura palace. Prabhu Baladeva, who was young, had been a priest at his Argasanya hermitage with the title Wasi Jaladhara, married to Dui Arawati, the daughter of Prabhu Salya, with Dui Setyawati or Pujawati from the country of Mandaraka. From this marriage he obtained two sons named Wasata and Wimuka. Balarama is hard-hearted, irritable but forgiving and wise. He was very good at using mace, so Bhima and Duryodhana studied him. Balarama has two powerful heirlooms, namely Nangala and Alugara, both of which were given by Brahma. He also has an elephant vehicle named Kyai Paspadanta. In many ways, Balarama is the opposite of Krishna. Krishna is black while Balarama is white. In the Bharatayuddha war, Balarama actually sided with the Kauravas, but thanks to Krishna's strategy, he did not participate but instead meditated in Grojogan Siwu. Grojogan equals waterfall, Siwu equals thousand, with the aim that in the event of a Bharatayuddha war, Balarama could not hear it because it was covered in a roar. Waterfall. In addition, Krishna promised to build him later when Bharatayuddha happened, even though the next day after he meditated in Grojogan Siwu there was a Bharatayuddha war. If Balarama participated, surely the Pandavas would lose, because Balarama was very powerful. Some say Balarama is an incarnation of a dragon while others believe it is an incarnation of Sanghyang Vasuki, the god of salvation. He lived a very long life. After the completion of the Bharatayuddha war, Balarama became the guardian and advisor of King Parakazit, the king of the state of Hastinapura after the death of King Kalamataya or King Puntadeva. He has the title of Rezi Balarama. He died dead after the extinction of the entire Resni house. Indian version of Krishna. Krishna, the younger brother of Balarama, is also called Narayana, a term that refers to the four-armed manifestation of Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha. Other names for Krishna are 1. Ahyuda, who never fails. 2. Arisudana, enemy destroyer. 3. Bhagavan, the supreme personality. 4. Gopala, cowherd. 5. Govinda, sensory blisser. 6. Rishikesa, master of the senses. 7. Janardana, savior. 8. Kesava, with beautiful hair. 9. Kesinishudana, giant killer Kesan. 10. Madhava, husband of Dui Lakshmi. 11. Madhusudana, the giant conqueror of Madhu. 12. Mahabahu, mighty armed Mahayogi. 13. Purusho_Ama, the main man, the beginning. 14. Varshniya, descendant of the Resni dynasty. 15. Vasudeva, son of Vasudeva. 16. Vishnu. 17. Yadava, descendants of the Yadu dynasty. 18. Yogeshvara, lord of all psychic powers. Lord Brahma told the gods, before we submitted our request to him, he was already aware of the misery on earth. Therefore, as long as he comes down to earth in order to fulfill his duty by using his own power as time, all of you gods will have a share to become sons and grandchildren of the Yadu family. Bhagavata Purana 10.1.22. Krishna is worshipped as the eighth avatar of Vishnu. Vishnu is considered to be the beginning of all reincarnations. Bhagavata Purana 10.1.22. The omnipotence of God during the war in Kurukshetra was witnessed by three people, namely, Arjuna, Sanjaya, and Vyasa. However, Sanjaya and Vyasa did not see directly, but through the inner eye of those who witnessed the Bharatayuddha war. After Krishna killed Kamsa, Kamsa's father-in-law, Jarasandha, cultivated hatred for Krishna and had an ambition to kill him. Seeing the sad condition that happened to her two daughters who became widows, Jarasandha vowed to attack Mathura and take the kingdom. Jarasandha, Kamsa's father-in-law, attacked Mathura with a large army, and although Krishna destroyed the giant army, another Asura, Kalayawan by name, also surrounded Mathura with another army of 3 million vicious demons. Then Kresna thought that it would be better for them to flee to Dwaraka. Buddhist version, Su_Apataka, Jataka number 454, Gata Jataka, which is the previous life story of the Buddha. Once upon a time, a king named Mahakansa ruled in U_Arapatha, in the region of Kamsa within the city of Asidanyana. He had 2 sons, Kamsa and Apakamsa, and one daughter named Devagaba. On her daughter's birthday, the Brahmins predict her future events. The boy born to this woman will one day destroy this land and the line of Kamsa. The king loved his daughter so much that he did not have the heart to kill her. He let his brothers, who overcame this prediction problem, live the rest of his life and then die. After he died, Kamsa became king and Apakamsa became deputy king. They both thought that there would be strong protests if they killed her sister, so they decided not to marry her off to any young man, and so that this plan could work and be monitored, they built a tower for her to live in. The princess had a maid named Nandagopa, and the maid's husband Andakavanhu, who was in charge of looking after her. At that time a king named Mahasagara was in power in Upper Madura, and he had 2 sons, Sagara and Apasagara. After their father died, Sagara became king and Apasagara became deputy king. This young man was a friend of Apakamsa, grew up with him and was taught by the same teacher. However, he had an affair with his brother's wife, and fled to Kamsa's territory looking for Apakamsa when his brother discovered the relationship. Upakamsa introduced him to Kamsa, and the king gave him a high position there. While Apasagara was serving the king, he observed the tower on which Devagaba was located. When he asked who lived in the tower, he found out about the story and fell in love with the woman. One day, Devagaba saw him as he was leaving with Upakamsa to meet the king. He asked Nandagopa who the young man was, and when he was told that it was Apasagara, the son of the great King Sagara, he also fell in love with him. Apasagara gave something to Nandagopa saying, "Sister, you can arrange for my meeting with Devagaba." Nandagopa said, "It is quite easy," and he also told the princess about this. The daughter who had fallen in love with him immediately agreed. One evening Nandagopa arranged an appointment, and led Apasagara into the tower. There he remained alone with Devagaba. Due to their continuous intimate relationship, Devagaba became pregnant. The situation was immediately noticed and the 2 brothers questioned Nandagopa. He made them promise to forgive him first, then tell him the ins and outs of the problem. After hearing the story, they thought, "We can't kill little brother. If she gives birth to a daughter, we let her live, but if she gives birth to a son, we will kill her." Quote, and they made Devagaba the wife of Apasagara. When the time came, she gave birth to a daughter. Her 2 brothers were delighted at this news, and gave her the name Princess Anyana. They also gave a village to his younger brother as a residence, which was called Govad di Hamana. Apasagara brought Devagaba to live together in the village. Soon Devagaba became pregnant again, and Nandagopa was also pregnant. When the time came, they gave birth to children at the same time. Devagaba gave birth to a son and Nandagopa gave birth to a daughter. But Devagaba, afraid that his son would be killed, sent him to Nandagopa and took Nandagopa's daughter as his son. They informed their 2 brothers about the birth. "Son or daughter?" they asked. "Daughter," he replied. "Then raise the child," said the 2 brothers. In the same way Devagaba gave birth to 10 sons and Nandagopa gave birth to 10 daughters. All the sons stayed with Nandagopa and all the daughters stayed with Devagaba. No one knows this secret. The eldest son of Devagaba was given the name Vasudeva, the second Baladeva, the third Kanda Deva, the fourth Surya Deva, the fifth Agi Deva, the sixth Varuna Deva, the seventh Arjuna, the eighth Pajuna, the ninth Gata Pandiyita, and the 10th Amkara. They were famous as the 10 sons of Andakavanhu the servant, the 10 brothers. As time went on they became adults, strong, cruel and vicious. They went around snatching other people's belongings, they even snatched things that would be given to the king. People flocked to the courtyard of the king's palace complaining, "Sons of Andakavanhu, 10 brothers are taking the whole village." So the king ordered the guards to take Andakavanhu and criticized him for letting his children commit the plunder. 3 or 4 times this complaint was made in the same manner, and the king began to threaten him. Andakavanhu, afraid that his safe life would be lost, told him the secret, that they were not his sons, but sons of Aposagara. The king was shocked. How can we fight them? He asked the ministers in his palace. They replied, Sire, they are wrestlers. Let's have a wrestling match in the city, and when they enter the arena, we catch them and kill them. Quote. So they summoned 2 Muktihika wrestlers, and made an announcement throughout the city with drumming. There was a wrestling match on the 7th day. The arena for the match was set up in front of the king's palace. A fence was made for the match. The arena was beautifully decorated. The victory flags were prepared. The entire city was very enthusiastic. Row upon row of seats full, row by row as well. Kanura and Muktihika entered the arena and roamed around in it arrogantly, jumping up and down, shouting, clapping their hands. The 10 brothers came too. Earlier on the journey, they grabbed the washer's clothes and took the brightly colored robes, and stole perfume from the shop, the flower garlands from the flower shop. With their perfumed bodies, garlands on their heads, earrings to their ears, they walked proudly into the arena, jumping up and down, shouting, and clapping their hands. At that time, Kanura walked around and clapped his hands. Baladeva, who saw him, thought, I will not touch that person over there with my hand. So taking the belt out of the elephant's cage, jumping and shouting, he threw it around Kanura's stomach and tied the 2 ends of the belt, held it tight, then lifted it, spun it over his head, and threw him firmly on the ground until he left the arena. After Kanura died, the king issued Muktihika. Muktihika climbed into the arena, jumping up and down, shouting and clapping her hands. Baladeva hit him and stabbed his eye, and as he screams, I'm not a wrestler. I'm not a wrestler. Baladeva locked his hands saying, wrestler or not, it makes no difference to me, and forcefully threw him to the ground, killing him and throwing him out of the arena. Mudika, on the eve of his death, made a wish, may I later become a yaka and eat him. And he became a yaka in a forest known as Kalama_Iya. The king said, take the 10 brothers away. At that very moment, Vasudeva threw a wheel weapon, chakra, which caught the heads of the 2 brothers, king and brother, off. The crowd who saw this became frightened, knelt down, and asked him to be their protector. Thus the 10 brothers took control of the city of Asidanyana after killing their own 2 uncles, and bringing their parents there. Then they went out of the palace with the aim of taking over all India. Not long after, they arrived at the city of Ayodhya, the seat of King Kalasena. They circled this city and destroyed the surrounding trees, knocked down the walls and captured the king, and took over the sovereignty of the place. Then they continued on to Varavati. The city is bordered by the sea on one side and mountains on the other. It is said that the place has a yaka. The yaka stood guard there, and upon seeing the enemy coming, would change its form to become a donkey and make a donkey whinny sound. Immediately, the city was floating in the air and positioned itself on the island in the middle of the sea by means of the yaka's supernatural powers, and when the enemy is gone, the city will return to its original place. This time as usual, when the donkey saw the arrival of the 10 brothers, he made a donkey whinny sound. The city immediately floated in the air and moved to the island in the middle of the sea. They did not see any city and returned. Then the city returned to its original place. They turned back. The donkey also said the same thing as before. They cannot take over sovereignty in the city of Varavati. So they went to visit Khan Hadapayana and said, Sir, we failed to take over the Varavati kingdom. Tell us how to conquer it. He said, in a waterway, in a place like that, there was a donkey watching. He neighs at the sight of the enemy, and the city will quickly float in the air. You have to bow at his feet. That's the way to beat him. Then they said goodbye to the hermit and went to find the donkey. Bowing to him, they said, Sir, only you can help us. When we come to take over the city, beg you don't whinny. The donkey replied, I can't help but bray. However, if 4 of you came with a large iron plow and dug a hole for the iron posts at the 4 city gates and then hooked the iron chain that was tied to the plow on that stake, he would not be able to float in the air. Quote. They thanked the donkey. and he did not make a whinny sound as they picked up the plow and put the poles in the holes made in the 4 city gates, and then he stood waiting. Not long after that, the donkey neighs and the city begins to drift. But those who stood at the 4 gates, each with iron plows tied to iron chains tied to posts, rendered the city unable to float in the air. At that instant, the 10 brothers entered the city, killed the king and took over the kingdom. This was how they conquered all India, and in 360,000 capitals they killed their kings with chakra weapons. And finally they stayed at Varavati, dividing his kingdom into 10 parts, but they forgot about his younger sister, Princess Anyana. So they said, let's divide it into 11 parts. But Amkara replied, just give him my share. I will do other things to survive, it's just that you have to send your respective taxes from your kingdom to me. Quote. They agreed and gave their share to their younger sister. And they remained Varavati with him, 9 kings, while Amkara was engaged in trading business. Over time, they were blessed with sons and daughters. After a long time passed, their parents died. It is said that at that time, a person's age reached 20,000 years. Indian version of Jarasandha. Jarasandha textually means, united by Hara. His father is named Brihadatta. Since King Brihadatta of the Magadha kingdom had no children, he decided to leave his kingdom and live in the forest as an ascetic. In the forest, he served a sage named Kandakosaka. The rishi felt sorry for Brihadatta, who had no children. Finally, the sage gave a miraculous fruit to be eaten by Empress Brihadatta. Since the sage did not know that Brihadatta had 2 queens, he only gave one. When he returned to his palace, Brihadatta cut the magic fruit given by the rishi Kandakosaka and divided it between his 2 queens. Several months later, the 2 consorts were Brihadatta gave birth to a child, but his body was only half and there were no signs of life. Out of fear, Brihadatta decided to throw the baby into the middle of the forest. A Rasis named Hara picked up the baby and put her body together. When put together, the baby was alive and crying loudly. The Rasis, who felt pity, handed the baby over to the king and explained what had happened. Brihadatta named the baby Jarasandha, which literally means, put together by Hara. When Kandakosaka arrived at Brihadatta's palace, he saw the baby and predicted that Jarasandha would receive a special gift, and would become known as a devotee of Shiva. Jarasandha grew up to be a famous and very powerful king, happy to expand his empire. He conquered many kings, and was given the title Maharaja Magadha. As his strength continued to grow, he felt anxious about his future because he did not have an heir to the throne. On the advice of his friend Banasara, Jarasandha offered his 2 daughters, Asti and Prapti, to be married to the crown prince Mathura, namely Kamsa. Jarasandha also lent his troops and advisors to Kamsa. Jarasandha tried to attack Mathura but his efforts failed when Mathura was led by Ugrasena, who was supported by Vasudeva, Akrura's military advisor, plus Kresna and Balarama forces. Jarasandha didn't give up until he attacked Mathura for the 18th time. In his 18th attack, he was assisted by King Sisupala of the Chedi kingdom, and King Kalayawana of Paschimadesa. After the last attack from Jarasandha, Kresna advised King Ugrasena and his father to evacuate and establish a new kingdom in Varaka. This was done for reasons of war strategy. One day, Krishna received a secret message from Magadha. Someone asked Kresna for help to free the kings who were imprisoned by Jarasandha in the fort of Garibraja. Kresna knew that Jarasandha was not easily defeated in battle, so he went to Indraprastha to ask Bhima and Arjuna for help. They went to see Jarasandha in the guise of 3 Brahmins. When Jarasandha entertained them and asked for what they needed, the 3 Brahmins asked Jarasandha to fight one of them. After some deliberation, Jarasandha chose Bhima. Jarasandha refused to free the kings he was holding, so he accepted the challenge of the duel and chose Bhima. The fight lasted a long time, about 27 days. To end the fight as soon as possible, Kresna beckoned Bhima. He took a leaf, tore it in half and threw it in the opposite direction. Bhima saw what Kresna was doing and he understood the meaning of the sign. Finally, Bhima grabbed Jarasandha's leg, tore his body in half and threw the body in the opposite direction. After Jarasandha's death, all the kings who were held captive could be released. Krishna raised Jarasandha's son, Sahadeva, to be king. The nature of this child was different from that of his father, so that Magadha became an ally of Indraprastha. Krishna's prominent wives were Radha, Rukmini, Princess Bhismaka of the Vidarbha kingdom, Satyabhama, Jambavati, Mitrabinda, Satyabhama, and others, whom he obtained with great deeds. For example, when Kresna ruled in Varaka, Duryodhana oppressed the Pandavas in Hastinapura and tried to destroy them. Krishna and Balarama went to help them, and at that time Krishna married Kalindi, son of the Surya. Each of his wives gave birth to 10 sons and a daughter. Another story is that when a giant named Bhaumasura, Narakasura took away and captured thousands of daughters, Kresna chased him and killed him and freed them all. According to the strict custom at that time, all the women in captivity were not eligible for marriage, meaning that there would be thousands of daughters who had no respect in the eyes of society. However, Krishna opened his arms and was happy to welcome them as noble daughters in his kingdom and made the 16,100 princesses as his wives. In the Vaishnava tradition, Kresna's wives in Dwarka are believed to be the incarnations of various forms of Devi Lakshmi. Narakasura, Bhaumasura Indian version Narakasura, Bhaumasura Indian version, is the giant king of the Pragjyotisha kingdom, or what is now known as the region of Assam, in East India. He is the son of Prithvi, so he is also known as Bhoma, which means, son of the earth. Naraka's father was Varaha, one of Vishnu's avatara, while helping the earth from disasters caused by Hiranyaksha. In Bhagavata Purana, Naraka is the son of Prithvi, the embodiment of the earth goddess, with Varaha, one of Vishnu's avatara. Vishnu incarnated as a Varaha, wild boar, to help the earth that Hiranyaksha drowned into a cosmic ocean. By using both of his fangs, Varaha managed to return the earth to its orbit, and killed Hiranyaksha. After this incident, Varaha married Prithvi, the embodiment of the earth. From that marriage, Naraka was born in the form of an asura. Naraka ruled the Pragjyotisha kingdom ruthlessly. He defeated many kings and captured their daughters, even attacked the gods. Feeling restless, Indra, the king of heaven, reported the incident to Sri Kresna. Kresna managed to kill Naraka using the Chakra Sudarsana weapon. After that, he also freed the kings and princesses who were held captive by the asura. Krishna then appointed Naraka's son, Bhagata_A, to become the next king of Pragjyotisha. This Bhagata_, a figure then sided with the Kauravas when a major war broke out in Kurukshetra. He finally died at the hands of Arjuna on the 12th day. Javanese Bhomakawaya version. The story of Naraka's death in the Bhagavata Purana script written by a Javanese poet with the title Bhomakawaya, or Death of Bhoma. This manuscript uses Old Javanese and was written during the development of the kingdoms in Java. Naraka or Bhoma is told as a cruel king of the Pragjyotisha kingdom who likes to annoy ascetics. He has a beautiful wife named Yadnyawati, the reincarnation of a heavenly angel. Their marriage was not harmonious because Yadnyawati always tried to avoid her husband. Krishna, the king of the Dwaravati kingdom, sent his eldest son, Samba, to protect the hermits from the attacks of the Bhoma soldiers. With the help of an angel named Tilo_Amma, Samba managed to infiltrate Pragjyotisha's palace and meet Yadnyawati. The next story is that Bhoma attacked the Dwaravati kingdom because Samba had taken Yadnyawati away. In one battle, Bhoma managed to kill Samba. But he himself eventually died at the hands of Kresna. After the war ended, Kresna brought Samba back to life. Samba then married Yadnyawati and the two lived happily. Prabhu Kresna Javanese version. In Javanese puppetry, Prabhu Kresna is Raja Dwaravati, the kingdom of the Yadava descendants, and is an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Krishna is the son of Vasudeva, king of Mandura. He, with the nickname Narayana, was born as the second son of 3 children. Her brother was known as Balarama, aka Kakrasana, and his sister was known as Subhadra, who was none other than Arjuna's wife. He has 3 wives and 3 children. His wives are Devi Jambavati, Devi Rukmini, and Devi Satyabhama. Her children are Raden Bhoma Narakasura, Raden Samba, and Siddhi Sundari. In the Bharatayuddha war, he was the coachman of Arjuna. He is also one of the main advisors of the Pandavas. Before the war against Karna, or in a round called Karna Tanding as Arjuna's coach, he gave Arjuna a long discourse. His words are known as Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is known as a very powerful person. He has the ability to predict, transform into a giant, and has the Vijaya Kusuma flower which can bring back the dead. He also has a weapon called Kakrabaswara which can be used to destroy the world, powerful heirlooms, including chakra weapons, Vijayakusuma flower, Pancasius shell trumpets, Senkala, Paisan glass, Aji Pameling and Aji Karastawan. After the death of King Balarama, Rezi Balarama, his brother, and the destruction of all the Resni and Yadawa dynasty, King Kresna wanted Moksa. He died in a penitential state with a hunter named Jara's arrow which hit his leg. Krishna is considered as the incarnation of Sanghyang Trivikrama, or the title of Bhattara Vishnu who can step in 3 realms at once. He is also seen as an intermediary for God's voice in carrying out his mission as the savior of mankind, and is equated with everything that is great. Boma Narakasura, son of Bhattara Vishnu and Bhattari Pertiwi. He was born in Kayangan Ekapratala where Bhattara Ekawarna, his maternal grandfather, lived. According to the Javanese version, Boma's first name is Sidya. He has a younger sister named Sitasundari who later became the wife of Abhimanyu, son of Arjuna from the Pandava family. As an adult, Sidya was asked by the gods to defeat her uncle, namely Bhamantara, who dared to attack heaven. In this battle, Sidya managed to kill Bhamantara. Bhamantara's spirit then unites within Sidya, increasing her strength. After Bhamantara's death, Sidya became king of the kingdom. Saradaleng has the title Boma Narakasura. He changed the name of the land from his uncle to Trajutrisna. Subsequently, Boma heard that his father, Vishnu, had been born into the world as a human named Krishna, the king of the Dwarawati kingdom. After going through a hard struggle, Boma finally got recognition as Kresna's eldest son. Boma is depicted as an antagonist who often gets into competition with Gatudvaka, the son of Bhimasena from the Pandava family. Even so, his death is still narrated by the hands of Kresna, his own father. Boma's death in the puppet show from Kakawin Bomakawaya by the puppeteers, especially Ki Nardo Sabdo. This event is called Gojalisuddha or the war between father and son. Boma's wife was called Agniyanawati, the daughter of Karentagniyana, the king of the Gyantipura kingdom. He only wants to serve Boma as long as a straight highway is made without turning from Trajutrisna to Gyantipura. Boma hesitated because the road must have broken through the Gandamadana hill, where Kresna's ancestor was buried. On the consideration of his mother, Boma finally decided to reject Agniyanawati's request, and he was even willing to divorce his wife. It turned out that Agniyanawati had been taken away by Samba, Kresna's son who was born from Jambawati. But Boma gave it up. He even planned to marry the two of them off. Kresna in Dwarawati was angry at Samba's behavior, who had an affair with his brother-in-law. A Boma envoy named Pankadnyana then came to ask Kresna to hand over Samba and Agniyanawati to be married at Trajutrisna. Kresna blessed and handed over the couple, but on the way Arjuna appeared to seize Samba and Agniyanawati because he was suspicious of Boma's decision. Arjuna also injured Pankadnyana and he sent a letter of challenge to Boma to seize Samba and Agniyanawati through battle. Boma angrily reads Arjuna's challenge letter. He also led the troops to invade the Dwarawati kingdom. Great war broke out. Boma is even more angry because he was instigated by his vehicle, which is a giant bird named Wilmana. Ruthlessly, Boma killed Samba and Agniyanawati and dismembered their bodies. In the ensuing battle, Arjuna finally retreated after being publicly humiliated because his clothes were torn after being attacked by Wilmana, Boma's vehicle. Boma then got into a fierce battle against Gatudvaka who sided with Dwarawati. Krishna appeared and regretted the war. He also released the Chakra Sudarsana weapon into the sky so that the soldiers who were fighting would know his presence and immediately stop the battle. But that incident actually caused Boma to have a fatal accident when he was about to land. The Wilmana bird he was driving was dazzled by the glint of Chakra Sudarsana's light, so it flew out of control and finally hit the weapon. As a result, both Wilmana and Boma died and their bodies were crushed. Unlike Bomakawaya, in this version Kresna does not bring Samba back to life. He gave up his 2 sons as victims of the Gojalisuddha war. Indian version of the Subhadra. The Indian version of Subhadra is the youngest daughter of the couple Vasudeva and Rahini, Vasudeva's first wife. She is white and was born after her father Vasudeva was released by Krishna. When Arjuna underwent his exile because he accidentally disturbed Yudhishthira, who was sleeping with Draupadi, on his way he arrived at Dwaraka, which is the residence of his cousin Kresna, because Arjuna's mother Kunti is a sibling with Kresna's father Vasudeva. There he disguised himself as a hermit to approach Krishna's younger brother, Subhadra. Krishna also knows about this and hopes Arjuna will marry Subhadra. At that time Arjuna's status was a husband who had 3 wives, namely Draupadi, Citrangada, and Ulupi. Krishna knew Balarama would never approve of the marriage. He arranged in such a way that Arjuna received the attention and sympathy of Balarama. Arjuna received a proper resting place in the garden of Subhadra. Krishna fought against them living there, but Balarama assured that bad events would not happen. Arjuna stayed for several months in Dwaraka, and Subhadra had served all his needs during that time. When the right moment came, Arjuna expressed his love for Subhadra. Subhadra welcomed the statement. It was at that time that Kresna had prepared a train. They went to Indraprastha to get married. Balarama was angry after hearing the news that Subhadra had fled with Arjuna. Kresna assured him that Subhadra was going on his own accord, and Subhadra himself was driving the train to Indraprastha, not Arjuna. Kresna also reminded Balarama that in the past he refused to let the 2 couples live together, but his proposal was opposed by Balarama, and by beating Arjuna not only would hamper Bharatavarsa's great plan but would also bring deep sorrow to their beloved sister Subhadra. Balarama also knew that his younger brother, Krishna, played the marriage. Finally he made a decision by holding a lavish wedding ceremony for Arjuna and Subhadra in Indraprastha. He also invited the Yadavas to also attend the Arjuna-Subhadra wedding. After the wedding feast took place, the Yadavas stayed in Indraprastha for a few days, then returned to Dwaraka, but Kresna did not participate. So Subhadra became Arjuna's 4th wife. Subhadra and Arjuna had a son, named Abhimanyu. When the Pandavas lost to dice with the Kauravas, they had to undergo a period of exile for 12 years, plus an incognito period of 1 year. Subhadra and Abhimanyu lived in Dwaraka while their father isolated himself in the forest. In those days Abhimanyu grew up to be a manly man and equal to his father. In India, Subhadra became one of the 3 gods worshipped at the Jagannath temple in Puri, along with his older brothers, Krishna, as Jagannatha, and Balarama, or Balarama, Balabhadra. One of the trains in the Ratha Yatra which is held annually is dedicated to him. According to some interpretations, Subhadra is considered the incarnation of Yagmaya. Karna Indian version. The Indian version, Karna is supposed to be the first child of Kunti Pandava mother. Karna literally means ear, so there is an assumption that Karna was born through the ear. However, the name Karna was only used when he was an adult, because this name also means skilled or clever. In other words, the name Karna was not a real name since she was a baby, but a nickname she used for her cleverness. Karna also has various calls, namely Basasana, Radheya, Suryaputra, Sudaputra, Resa and Angaraja. In addition to these names in the Javanese puppet version there are still several additional names, namely Basukarna, Suryatmaja, Arkasuda, Rawisuda, Pridasuda, Bismantaka, Taladharma and Angadipa. In the Javanese version, Kunti gives birth to the son of Surya through the ear so that her virginity is maintained. This Javanese version of the story is strengthened by the literal meaning of Karna, which is ear. Meanwhile, the Indian version mentions that Kunti gave birth normally with Surya's help. In order to protect the good name of his country, Kunti, who gave birth to a child before marriage, was forced to throw son Surya in the Aswa river in a basket. The baby was then carried away and was found by Adarata, who worked as a train coach for Drestarasta. Adarata happily adopted the baby as his child. Since he was born already wearing a battle suit complete with earrings, necklace and armor given by Surya, the baby was given the name Basasana. Since then Basasana has become the adopted son of the Adarata family, so that he is known as Sudaputra or son of the coachman. However, his more well-known name is Radheya, which means son of Radha. Meanwhile, Radha is the name of Adarata's wife. Despite growing up in a family of coachmen, Radheya aspires to become a royal officer. Adarata also enrolled him in the Resi Drona school, which at that time was educating the Pandavas and the Kauravas. However, Drona refused Radheya because he was only willing to teach the Kshatriya. Radheya, who was determined, decided to continue studying even though secretly. He often stalks Drona while teaching war skills to his students, especially archery or Dhanurveda. Even though he studied unofficially, Radheya's prowess in archery surpassed Drona's students, except for Arjuna. This skill talent is what makes Radheya nicknamed Karna. One day Karna met a priest named Parasurama who had taught Drona. The gallant pastor lived a long life, from the Tretayuga era, Ramayana era, to the Dwaparayuga era, Mahabharata era. Parasurama had bad experiences with the Kshatriya caste, so he was known as a hater of the Kshatriyas. This caused Karna to disguise herself as a young Brahmin in order to approach him. In that way Karna succeeded in becoming a student of Parasurama. One day, when Parasurama wanted to rest, Karna provided his lap as a pillow. When Parasurama was fast asleep, suddenly an insect appeared biting Karna's thigh. Because of his devotion to the teacher, Parasurama, so as not to disturb his deep sleep, Karna let his thigh hurt until blood spilled out while he did not move at all. When Parasurama woke up from his sleep, he was surprised to see that Karna's feet were covered in blood. Karna's ability to endure pain astonished Parasurama, and he said to his disciple, "Since you have such great strength to endure pain, you must not be a Brahmin descendant." Karna then confirmed, "Yes, I was born into a chariot driver's family." Feeling cheated, Parasurama cursed Karna. Later, during the battle between life and death against the greatest enemy, Karna would forget all the knowledge that Parasurama had taught him. After receiving the curse from Parasurama, Karna sadly moved and left the dormitory. After walking aimlessly, he arrived at the beach. Dumbfounded by his true self, he sat there for a while, then got up and then left. When he returned to the place, he saw a beast moving fast. Thinking the animal was a deer, he fired an arrow to kill it. After looking closely, Karna realized that the animal he was killing was not a deer, but a Brahmin's cow. Karna went to see the owner to apologize for his carelessness. However, the Brahmin was already angry and cursed because Karna would die while he was careless, as he had killed his beloved cow, who was also off guard. Another version tells that one day Karna drove her own train and drove fast until she killed a cow crossing the road. The Brahmin who owned the cow became angry, then cursed Karna so that one day the wheels of her carriage would sink in the mud when fighting against her toughest enemy. Because it is a figure with complete characteristics. He is known as a person who is full of confidence, firm, brave, cruel to opponents, loyal to friends, and generous to the poor. Because he has proficiency in archery, which is almost equivalent to Arjuna. He was adept at fighting, but his talents were trapped in a low social status. It made him thirst for a status that gave him an identity. Even though Karna was raised in a low caste family, she had the attitude of a knight, although she rarely acknowledged it. He had a close friendship with Duryodhana, who had made him king of the Anga kingdom, as well as elevated his status. Due to Duryodhana's kind treatment towards him, Karna promised that he would always be on Duryodhana's side. Karna's hatred for Arjuna met in one way with Duryodhana's hatred for the Pandavas. Karna has intense competition with Arjuna, and is ambitious that he will just kill Arjuna at Bharatayuddha, not the other Pandavas. Before Bharatayuddha, Kunti came before Karna and said that she was actually her mother. Kunti told Karna to side with the Pandavas. Karna said that she only recognized Radha as her mother and still sided with the Kauravas. Karna also said that he only wanted to kill Arjuna, not the other Pandavas. When the time came, Drona presented the results of the education of the Pandavas and Kauravas in front of all the aristocrats and people of Hastinapura, the capital of the Kuru kingdom. After going through various stages of competition, Drona finally decided that Arjuna was his best student, especially in terms of archery. Suddenly Karna appeared to challenge Arjuna while showing off his powers. Rezi Krepa, the palace priest, asked Karna to explain his origins first because to face Arjuna must be from an equal. Hearing the request, Karna bowed embarrassed. Duryodhana, the leader of the Kauravas, stepped forward to defend Karna. According to him, courage and greatness were not only possessed by Kshatriya. However, if the rules did so, Duryodhana was willing to obey them. He then urged his father, namely Dhritarashtra king of Hastinapura, that Karna be given the position of vassal king in Anga. The weak-hearted Dhritarashtra was unable to refuse the request. Finally, at that time, Karna was crowned king of Anga. The Brahmins recited the Vedas and Duryodhana gave Karna the crown, sword and water of coronation. Karna was touched by Duryodhana's generosity. The reply Duryodhana wanted was only eternal friendship. Adhirata appeared rejoicing at his coronation. As a result, everyone knows that Karna is Adhirata's son. Seeing this, Bhimasena mocked Karna as the son of a coachman so that it was inappropriate to compete against Arjuna who was from the nobility. Seeing Bhimasena's actions, Duryodhana returned to defend Karna. The atmosphere was getting tense and heated. But no one realized that Kunti fell unconscious in the audience seats after seeing the eldest son who he had abandoned since he was born, now an adult and facing each other with his other sons. The characteristics that make Kunti immediately recognize him are the war clothes and jewelry provided by Surya, which Karna always wears. Dusk arrived. Dhritarashtra dismissed the event so that the match between Karna and Arjuna was postponed. However, since then, friendship began between Karna and Duryodhana, the leader of the Kauravas. Because they have a son named Resasena. The name of Karna's wife in the Javanese puppet version, namely Sirtakanti, the third daughter of Prabhu Salya, the king of the kingdom of Madra Mandaraka. It is said that Sirtakanti was in love with Karna even though she was engaged to Duryodhana, the Javanese spelling for Duryodhana. Because what went awry finally kidnapped Sirtakanti and took her away. The accusation of kidnapping Sirtakanti also fell to Arjuna, who was visiting the Mandaraka palace at that time. Continues to Section 8.